Sigmund Freud and Carl Gustav Jung were two of the most influential figures in the history of psychology. What's extraordinary about them is that not only did these two titans of psychology live during the same time, but they also collaborated closely to lay a strong foundation for modern psychology. However, what began as a strong partnership eventually turned into sharp disagreements and professional differences, leading to the breakdown of one of the most exciting collaborations in the history of science. Both Freud and Jung came from totally different backgrounds. Sigmund Freud was born in 1856 in what is now the Czech Republic. He was raised in a Jewish family in Vienna and studied medicine, focusing on neurology. As a doctor, Freud became fascinated by patients with unexplained symptoms, which led him to develop the theory of the unconscious. Freud believed that beneath the surface of our awareness, there was a hidden world of repressed memories and desires, particularly sexual urges, which influenced our behavior. His work laid the foundation for what he called psychoanalysis, a method of treatment focused on bringing these hidden thoughts to light. Carl Gustav Jung was born in 1875 in Switzerland, and his upbringing was quite different from Freud's. He grew up in a religious environment and spent much of his childhood surrounded by nature. Jung's father was a pastor, and his childhood was filled with questions about spirituality and the meaning of life. Jung was also fascinated by dreams, myths, and ancient stories. He studied medicine like Freud, but was more interested in psychiatry, the branch of medicine focused on mental illness. Jung's early work involved studying people with schizophrenia, and he was deeply curious about the mysterious ways the mind could work. In the early days of his career, Carl Jung was heavily influenced by Sigmund Freud. He first became interested in psychiatry as a student after reading Psychopathia Sexualis by Richard von Krafft-Ebing. After earning his degree in 1900, Jung started working under psychiatrist Eugen Bleuler at Burghalsli Hospital in Zurich. Bleuler introduced him to Freud's ideas by asking him to review Freud's book, The Interpretation of Dreams. At that time, psychology was still a new field, but Jung quickly became a fan of Freud's method called psychoanalysis. Freud also needed partners to help promote his ideas, and he noticed Jung's rising reputation. In 1906, Jung sent Freud a copy of his work, Studies in Word Association, and later shared another published piece, Diagnostic Association Studies. This led to a lively exchange of letters between them. In 1907, Jung met Freud in Vienna, where their first discussion lasted 13 hours, marking the beginning of a deep respect and a collaboration that lasted 6 years. Jung also became an editor of the Yearbook for Psychoanalytical and Psychopathological Research in 1908. In 1909, Jung, Freud, and Hungarian psychoanalyst Sándor Ferenczi traveled to the United States for a conference at Clark University. This event helped psychoanalysis gain acceptance in North America and allowed Jung to make important connections. In 1910, Freud suggested Jung as his successor and as president of the new International Psychoanalytical Association, calling him his crown prince. But even as their ideas grew together, cracks began to form, revealing a deeper ideological rift. As Carl Jung worked on his book Psychology of the Unconscious, tensions between him and Sigmund Freud started to rise. One of the key disagreements was about the nature of libido. While Freud believed that sexual development and the libido were central to shaping personality, Jung had a different view. He saw the libido as just one source of personal growth, and he placed more emphasis on the collective unconscious. In 1912, these tensions reached a peak. Jung felt insulted when Freud visited a colleague in Kreuzlingen, near Zurich, without visiting him, an incident Jung referred to as the Kreuzlingen gesture. Shortly after, Jung traveled to the United States and gave a series of lectures at Fordham University, which were later published as Psychology of the Unconscious. This work highlighted Jung's differing views on libido and marked the beginning of their professional break. Jung himself said that this publication cost me my friendship with Freud. Another major disagreement came from their differing views of the unconscious. Freud believed the unconscious was a place where repressed emotions and desires were stored. Jung, however, saw this view as incomplete and too negative. Their relationship continued to deteriorate. In November 1912, during a meeting in Munich, Jung expressed his views on conflicts within the psychoanalytic movement, leading to an awkward moment when Freud fainted during the discussion. It was the publication of Jung's book, The Psychology of the Unconscious, in 1912 that led to the final break with Freud. The letters they exchanged show Freud's refusal to consider Jung's ideas. They met for the last time in September 1913 at a psychoanalytical congress in Munich. Jung officially broke away from Freud's school of thought and developed his own system, which he called analytical psychology. This marked the end of their collaboration and friendship. Freud was deeply disappointed. He had viewed Jung as his intellectual heir, and the split was painful for both men. Freud continued to develop his psychoanalytic theory, but he never again formed such a close relationship with another thinker. Jung, meanwhile, began to fully develop his own ideas, free from Freud's influence. As the years passed after their falling out, both Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung continued to make significant contributions to psychology, though their paths never crossed again. Freud, despite suffering from health problems later in life, remained dedicated to his work on psychoanalysis. He fled to London in 1938 to escape Nazi persecution in Austria, as he was of Jewish descent. Freud's health declined further due to cancer, and in 1939, at the age of 83, he passed away in London. Carl Jung, on the other hand, spent the latter part of his life developing and expanding his theories, particularly around the collective unconscious, archetypes, and psychological types. He died peacefully in 1961 at the age of 85 in Switzerland, having become one of the most influential psychologists of all time.